Hello everyone, and thanks very much for joining today's webinar. We'll just give it a few seconds just to let some more people join, and then we'll make a start. Right, it looks as though the numbers have stabilised, so we'll make a start. Hello, and welcome to this webinar on the relaunched MCHW. My name is Andrea, and I'll be your facilitator for the day. Our key speakers today are Steve Davey, head of our Technical Standards Group, and he's joined by Anthony Atkins, Principal Advisor, and Suleiman Sater, Senior Advisor, both in Steve's group. Before we get started, we've got a few housekeeping bits to run through. Firstly, just a reminder that this webinar is being recorded and that all mics will be muted throughout the session to minimise background noise. The chat will also be disabled, so if you have any questions, please pop them in the Q&A tab, which you'll find at the top of your screen. We'll aim to answer as many questions as possible today, so please do vote up any questions that you want us to prioritise. We'll also be compiling an FAQ document, which we'll add to our guidance pages on the Standards for Highways website. These sessions have been very popular, so we've added this as an additional session, plus we've got an additional session on the 29th of January. You can find sign-up details for that on our What's On page. That's our National Highways What's On page. In a moment, I'll hand you over to Steve Davey, but first, here's a video from Mike Wilson, our Chief.
The manual of contract documents for highway works ensures we deliver safe, efficient transport across the entire strategic road network. It provides the specifications that go into every construction project. We have modernised the MCHW to make it fit for the future. It will support innovation in digital design, construction and operation of highways infrastructure. This isn't just about updating old paperwork. This is about the future of digital construction and operation of our roads. It is the biggest update to these documents in their 30-year history and is the culmination of 5 years' work of technical specialists across 4 nations and industry. Thank you for watching this video about why we're making these important changes. Please check out the resources we have available.
Hello everyone, and welcome to this webinar about the updated MCHW. Today we're going to talk about where we were before we started the updates, where we are now, what has changed, how this affects you, and importantly, the available support that we've made available to ease that transition from the old MCHW to the one we've now published. So there's National Highways, on behalf of the 4 UK nations, manages 2 sets of standards and specifications, the MCHW and the Design Manual for Roads and Bridges. And the MCHW contains the specification documents and the method and measurements for highway works, and the Design Manual for Roads and Bridges contains the design requirements for that. We've certainly worked very closely with the Welsh Government, Transport Scotland and Department of Infrastructure Northern Ireland, as we always do, on updates to specifications and design requirements. So the main focus of this project was the MCHW, but it's very important to be aware that there were 67 DMRB documents that were also amended or created as part of this process, because we found some design requirements that were within the MCHW which are better placed in the DMRB, but also new products or new ways of working are being introduced in the MCHW that require designers to make decisions, and therefore we've updated the DMRB so that it requires those decisions to be made appropriately. Many of you will be familiar with the DMRB was refreshed in 2020, and this is a continuation of that work to produce them in a new consistent digital format, and enhancements to the website have also been made as a result of that. But the MCHW refresh was a bigger change, and it will affect the way in which you as users of the MCHW carry out certain tasks, such as, if you're a contract compiler, the new ways of working to replace the old numbered appendices that we used to have, which we'll explain later in this webinar. So there is going to be a more of a learning curve, and there's some more support you will need when you're using the documents, and we'll talk about the available routes for support as we go through this presentation. So if we have a look at where we were in April 2020 and where we are now. So in April 2020, the MCHW consisted of 7 volumes, 126 documents, 571 drawings, and 3,485 pages. It was all published in PDF, which limited the ability for machine readability and accessibility. The average age of these documents was 11 years, and so all required some form of technical update or just a general review to ensure there was correct, or withdraw in some cases. And due to the MCHW's history, there was a document set that was inconsistent in the style and format, and the approaches presented, as it had been so long in some of the documents at the time between the oldest document and the newest documents in the set. And this led to inconsistent contract specifications, varying styles and quality. We'll talk a lot about improvements to this way of working because there was no templates for contract specifications. So the contract compiler, in many cases, could create their own format, but that created inefficiencies later on in the tendering process. And also, sometimes on occasions, they weren't complete. So we're trying to do some work around templating and different ways of producing that so that we get a better quality contract document out of it. And it underscores the importance of this work to modernise the MCHW. So it's not just a tidy up of legacy contact, but we wanted to create a more coherent, accessible and future-ready framework for delivering world-class highways. So that's where we were in April 20. But what happened next? Well, at the start of RIS2, the government gave us a commitment to develop and deliver a work programme to refresh the MCHW during Roads Period 2 and to reflect the needs of its users. And the refresh should take account of a stakeholder consultation that we undertook around 2018. This was industry-wide. Over 100 different organisations, including trade organisations, product manufacturers, designers and contractors, contributed to that consultation. So although we had this obligation, obviously behind that, as I explained previously, there were some issues with the current, or the MCHW that was current in 2020. So we was charged with leading this work on behalf of the 4 overseeing organisations. And we created the vision of where we wanted to go. So we wanted to look at the future MCHW will provide clear and unambiguous requirements and instructions that are compatible with modern contract forms and future construction practices. It's true to say that most of the MCHW was previously written around the ICE 5th terms conditions of contract. And so the majority of highway contracts now, we use various NEC forms of contract, and some of the terms weren't compatible, or the ways of working weren't compatible within there. So, but we want to make it allowances for all types of contract that are likely to be used. And so if we look at the timeline, it's really, as I said before, just a continuation of the work we did on the DMRB. It was supported behind the scenes by National Highways' own collaborative authoring and review system, which is a dedicated platform for standards development. And the development of the new MCHW and the related DMRB document changes has been in progress since 2021. And that involved authoring, review, consultation, so that the documents we've now published are as updated as possible. But it also enables, because we've gone onto this digitalized system, to enable more frequent updates to the MCHW, rather like we have been doing for the DMRB for the last 5 years. So this led to the publication of the Standards for Highways website in September 2025. And we verified the changes as being with the suppliers who undertake the contract compiler role. And with the suppliers, within the suppliers, those people have now become largely, many of them, MCH ambassadors to support implementation within their own organisation. So where are we now? The MCHW comprises of 3 streamlined document sets. There's 25% fewer documents, 20% fewer pages, and all the content is digitalized and it's available in an MCHW, in an HTML format. And this improves the accessibility. The HTML versions are easier to navigate using more search functions that are built into modern browsers and to navigate on the website, and enables future activities around machine readability. So the documents are now up to date and aligned to industry best practice, and it's aligned to the DMRB design content as well. And due to the update, the whole MCHW and DMRB document set is now in a consistent style and format. And finally, and the important bit, is the templates for contract specifications are now available on the Standards for Highways website to support that consistency. As well as that, we've got clear national variations. Before, these were included in line, and sometimes you had to read past lots of details about a country that you may not have been working in. So now, as will be shown later on the website, it's very clear that you need to select which country of the UK, so whether England, Wales, Scotland or Northern Ireland, that the contract is based in, to access the standards that are relevant to that country. And this reflects the devolution in the powers to the various nations across the UK. So there's various benefits to what we've just done. There's clear and unambiguous requirements, the alignment with the DMRB, and the templates will embed quality from design to construction and improves that contract preparation. The digitalized standards are more accessible and easier to maintain and keep up to date. And the technical updates are an enabler to future construction practices. So on that point, hopefully that slide's going to move on. Yes, there's more efficiency, accessible, and enables better environmental outcomes, which is something important to which I should talk about. Is there's lots more opportunities in the standards now for the use of low carbon materials, and I know that a lot of suppliers have needed to apply for departures over recent years to use those materials, but there is now much more opportunity to use low carbon materials. So at that point, I'll hand over to Anthony, who will talk you through the key changes in the new MCHW.
Thank you, Steve, and good afternoon, everyone. So building on that, I'm going to take us through, as Steve said, in a little bit more detail, what has changed with the MCHW. Well, there are 6 key changes being introduced to the MCHW: a restructuring of the document set, a new document style, the introduction of templates to create contract-specific appendices, the introduction of country-specific versions, updates to align the design manual and the MCHW, and selected updates to the technical content. So looking at these changes in a bit more detail. The MCHW has a new structure. In the old world, the MCHW contains 7 volumes. The updated MCHW now contains 3 sets of documents. We have the new specification for highway works, primarily draws from volume 1, with additional material incorporated from volumes 0, 2, 3 and 5. This covers the constructor requirements. We have the instructions for specifiers. This is largely based on content from volume 2, plus relevant content from volumes 0 and 5. This covers instructions for the specifier in line with the relevant constructor requirement. And finally, we have the method of measurement. This is built upon what was volume 4, with a few rules coming from what was volume 5. A note on the old volume 3, the drawings. These were all reviewed as part of the programme. Relevant content has been transferred to the design manual or specification for highway works as applicable, as requirements or as figures. In addition, content relevant to designers that was in the old volume 2, the notes for guidance, that has been updated and also moved to the design manual to provide design rules. So what we now have in the new world is 44 specification for highway works documents. We have 45 instructions for specifiers documents. 44 of those are associated to a specification document, and 1 is an introductory document. And there are now 50 method of measurement documents. 44 of those are associated with a specification document, and the remaining 6 are standalone. And finally, as Steve mentioned, this hasn't just been about the MCHW. We have updated 52 existing DMRB documents and have created 15 new design manual documents. Alongside the new structure, the MCHW has a new numbering system. In refreshing the MCHW, we took the opportunity to align the numbering system with the matrix of technical requirements we introduced for the design manual in Road Period 1. The matrix provides the framework for alphanumeric codes. The first letter is discipline specific. The second letter corresponds to the project life cycle stage, and the number depends on the specific topic. Instructions for specifiers relate to the contract preparation stage and are therefore denoted with a P. Specification for highway works documents relate to the construction stage and are denoted with a C. Here is an example showing 3 road layout MCHW documents. On the left, we have the specification document. As you can see, it is prefixed with CC, identifying it as part of the civils discipline and indicating it as the constructor requirements, and the digits indicating it as part of the road layout topic. In the middle, we have the instructions for specifiers document. It is prefixed with CP, again identifying it as part of the civils discipline, and the P is indicating it as the contract preparation set. And finally, on the right of your screen, we have the method of measurement document. These are associated to a related specification document. And here we can see how those documents sit within the technical matrix. Now, there are a few documents to be aware of. Firstly, the indexes for the new SHW, IFS and method of measurement. Secondly, the introductory documents, and specifically GP 110, which gives implementation requirements for MCHW and instruction to specifiers on the compilation of contract documents for highway works. GC 100 covers the introduction to the SHW, and GP 112 covers the introduction to the method of measurement for highway works documents. I'm also sharing here on the right a list of a few general documents replacing the preliminaries in the old MCHW. I'm just going to pause for a few seconds for you to take those in. So let's move on to the next key change. The MCHW requirements have a new consistent style. Looking back to the old MCHW, we used to have multiple requirements in the same paragraph and a combination of requirements and advice, not appropriate for a contractual document. And in a similar approach to the notes for guidance and a loose relationship with the related contract-specific appendices in Volume 2. The new specification for highway works offers clear and concise constructor requirements with a consistent structure for product, installation, verification, and documentation requirements. As you begin working with these documents, you'll quickly notice familiar patterns that make application much more intuitive. The new instructions for specifier documents incorporate the requirements from the specification, while also providing associated specifier instructions to enhance usability and minimize the need to navigate between different documents. These instructions come in two forms, either as direct statements, like the example shown on screen, or as schedules designed to be completed. Finally, you will begin to see references to works-specific requirements, WSRs. The work-specific requirements, which replace the old contract-specific appendices using a standardized format. They play an important role in this updated style, and I'll introduce these over the next slide. So moving us on to these work-specific requirement templates. Requirements relevant to a particular contract are now to be provided within templates, which will be downloaded from the instructions for specifier documents on the Standards for Highways website. Each template will have a tab per relevant section for the document, with work-specific requirements to be provided within schedules or statements. An example can be seen on the left-hand side of the screen. The text that you can see in red is just guidance content. Each template will also have a departure schedule to list cancelled, substitute, or additional requirements, which have been previously submitted and approved for a departure from standards. An example is shown on the right of your screen. Detailed guidance on how to complete these work-specific requirement templates and prepare for dissemination, including how to display large tables, for example, is provided on the Information Hub, which Suleiman will introduce later. The fourth and a significant change we've introduced is represented by the country-specific versions. In the old manual, documents had national variations, typically provided in annexes. Now they are presented within the main text. When accessing a document from the Standards for Highways website, users are now prompted to select a relevant country and open a country-specific version. Here, you can also see an example of what these documents look like when downloaded. Specifically, the nationally determined requirements are introduced by the country prefix, this being E for National Highways requirements, NI for Department for Infrastructure Northern Ireland, S for Transport Scotland, and W for Welsh Government. The next key change has been about aligning the MCHW and the Design Manual for Roads and Bridges. The MCHW works only in partnership with the Design Manual. So in refreshing the MCHW, relevant Design Manual documents have also been reviewed and amended to align content. We've also created those 15 additional Design Manual documents to cover items that were not previously dealt with. Importantly, this supports the wider aspiration of the overseeing organisations of National Highways, Transport Scotland, Welsh Government and the Department for Infrastructure Northern Ireland to reinforce continuity of thinking from design through to construction and handover into maintenance and operation. And finally, technical requirements in MCHW documents and associated design manual documents, the content has been updated to bring them up to date. This included a review of latest industry practices and standards to make the document set fit for the future. We're not going to run through specific technical changes to documents now. There are far too many to try and cover in this webinar. However, a summary of key technical changes by document is available from the Information Hub that Solomon's going to introduce shortly. We've also shared a list of all topics contained in the updated MCHW, which will help you find relevant information more easily. Again, all available on the Information Hub. What I would like to flag, though, is that a detailed assessment of the changes made has been undertaken, and this has revealed a range of positive impacts, some of which include environmental considerations. The introduction of more options will contribute to improved sustainable outcomes. Operational considerations. We will be able to see shorter traffic management periods and reduced construction programs, which in turn enhance health and safety practices. Ultimately, these improvements will translate into meaningful benefits for all of our customers. As I start to wrap up, just returning to the reducing carbon across the strategic road network opportunities, I'll finish up with a shameless plug. Alongside the relaunched MCHW and the 67 documents in the Design Manual for Roads and Bridges, where we've updated or created, the updates cover most disciplines, including pavements, structures, drainage, and roadside technology. The modernised MCHW and updated DMRB present a major opportunity for our project teams, our design partners, and supply chain to meaningfully contribute to reducing carbon across the strategic road network. We run a series of webinars during the first week of November, looking at how the new standards are removing barriers and unlocking innovation to accelerate our journey to net zero. If you work in any aspect of the design and delivery of construction and maintenance projects, these webinars are an opportunity to see how you can start putting the benefits of the new standards into practice straight away. You can watch these recordings of the webinars via the National Highways Carbon Hub on SharePoint, and we will provide a link to that as part of the presentation. But that was my plug. I'm now going to hand you over to Solomon, who's going to explain how this affects you and the available support. Thank you.
Thank you, Anthony. Good afternoon, everyone. Next on the agenda, we will focus on implementation of the MCHW since launch, its impact on different roles interacting with it, and where to find the relevant support and guidance. So I expect many of you will be wondering when the updated documents will be used, how it affects your projects, and whether you need to change what you are doing in response to those updates. In short, we expect new contracts that are led from 30th of September 2025 onwards will implement the updated documents. The implementation requirements are stated in the new GP 110 introduction to the MCHW. Now, this document also includes the option for overseeing organisations not to use the updated MCHW for a project that is in advanced in design stage, where it could cause significant cost and time implications. This is particularly relevant for existing contracts. Your client project manager will be responsible for making this decision in compliance with the implementation requirements in GP 110. And it's relevant to point out that this approach to adopting updated published standards remains consistent with current practice. Please remember, though, the old and new style MCHW documents should not be mixed, as this can create contractual confusion. Unless you decide to use a specific new DMRB document, a new document or any new clauses on the existing contract, in which case it will need a departure from standards. So two key messages I want you to take from this slide. And one is the implementation requirements are stated in GP 110. And the other, the decision is for the project team to make and record that on how you do and what is your choice. On the next slide, I've got answers to 4 frequently asked questions we have received from previous webinars, which hopefully will answer some key questions on when to implement the MCHW documents. The first question: I have an existing construction contract led before 30 September 2025. Should I redraft my contract specific specification to align with the updated MCHW? It is not envisaged that the updated MCHW would be used. Please note that even though the MCHW documents required by the contract will now show as superseded on the standards for Highways website, they can still be used in most cases for existing contracts. The second question: I have an existing construction contract led before 30th September 2025, and now I need to update the contract specific specification. Should I use the updated DMRB and MCHW documents? So in this case, there is a contract change. Hence, the project team would need to decide how they wish to implement the design changes and whether to use the updated DMRB. It is not envisaged that the updated MCHW would be used to draft the updated contract specific specification. As I previously mentioned, this would need to be confirmed by the project manager and recorded by the project team. The third question: I have designed to the old DMRB, which completed before 30th September 2025, and now I need to start drafting the contract specific specification. Should I redesign it following the updated DMRB and then use the updated MCHW? Well, it is not envisaged that a redesign will be needed here. However, this would need to be confirmed by the project manager and recorded by the project team. In terms of drafting the contract specification, the implementation requirements are stated in GP 110, and it would need to be complied with. The decision whether to use the new documents will depend on the stage of the project and the impact of implementing the new documents. Fourth question: my project is using the previous version of the MCHW. Can I adopt technical changes implemented in the updated MCHW and DMRB documents? In this case, if the project team wanted to use any of the individual technical changes in the individual updated MCHW documents, then they could use the alterations system for the old MCHW. That means to use substitute requirements, additional requirements, and or cancel requirements as set out in the old series NG000. Again, that would need to be assessed for individual technical areas. So how does this affect you? There are different roles interacting with the updated MCHW and DMRB documents. As shown on the screen, and all of you need to familiarize yourselves with the relevant updates of the technical requirements. Implications on your role vary depending on what you do. We've identified 9 audiences, and with the next few slides, I'll cover some high-level information about key impacts. More details are provided on the MCHW Information Hub, which I will show you shortly. So if you are a designer, firstly, you will need to be aware of DMRB consequential amendments. As presented by Anthony and mentioned by Steve earlier, there are 67 DMRB documents which have been updated or newly created to align with the MCHW. Technical changes have been made, so please be familiar with those. It is important to note there is no change to establish practice. You will continue to undertake design activities and produce design outputs. The main difference is that those outputs will now need to be used to populate the work-specific requirement templates rather than the contract-specific appendices. As a specifier, you will need to familiarize yourselves with the new instructions to comply with the contract specifications, which are now provided in the IFS documents in line with the relevant construction requirement. It is important to note you're now expected to complete the work-specific requirements, i.e. the WSR templates. Please follow the guidance contained in the Information Hub, which I will show you shortly. As a constructor, you will need to make sure you've reviewed the updated SHW documents. Some technical changes may have been made. Next, take time to familiarize yourself with the WSR templates as they'll be used for the new contract specific specifications. And finally, just keep in mind any implementation consideration that may affect delivery on site. As a project manager, you will need to understand implementation considerations, particularly for existing contracts. It is recommended that you read and digest GP 110. If you are intending to use the updated documents on your schemes, review them in detail. Technical changes may have happened, and you need to be aware of those. As a product supplier, you'll need to start by reviewing the updated documents for the technical areas relevant to your product or service. In most cases, if your materials or products met the requirements of the old MCHW, they are likely to align with the updated versions as well. However, it's essential to ensure they meet the specific specification requirements of the contract they are being used for. And as a certification body, you'll need to be aware that the new document and clause numbering system may affect existing certifications, especially where the reference to the old series of clause numbers are identified. It is important to review the updated documents for the technical areas relevant to your product or service, and to check the latest verification and documentation requirements to ensure continued compliance. And if you are a quantity surveyor, you will need to be aware that the new methods of measurements, or the MCHW documents, have been broken up into different documents that align with the SHW documents. Although the content within is largely unchanged, you will need to familiarize yourselves with the WSR templates as well. Where the contract involves bills of quantities, you will use the MCHW contract specific specification, which involves the completed WSR templates and drawings to measure and assess the cost of the solution. And as a local authority, we recommend you review the documents and check whether the changes made can impact your own documentation. For example, the new document and clause numbering system may affect your documents if there are direct references to the old MCHW series or clauses. Also, whilst the MCHW has been drafted for the motorway and trunk road network, WSRs can be targeted to different roads and related authorities, making them usable by everyone. And finally, as a software developer, key points here are the new document and clause numbering system, including the MCHW, which may impact your software if there are direct references to the old MCHW series of clauses. Also, the content is now provided in HTML with a plan to provide an API interface with third-party systems sometime in the future. So let's focus now on the available support that's available. And this is the final section where we will run through the available support. We will cover how to find the updated documents, the available guidance and support routes for feedback. So let's start with how to find the SHW documents. All documents are published and available to download from the Standards for Highways website. The search functionality has been updated. So you will now be searching by country, document type, and applicable date, which is the date relevant to your contract. So if you are looking for the most current documents, please set the date to today's date, for example, or you can find previous versions by using the relevant past date that you know of. Once you launch the search, the following page will appear, listing all relevant documents. You can see the expanded view, and you can also select a compact view by clicking here. Let's select CC 120 for now. This is a SHW document. The document page will appear. You can open the document in HTML or download a PDF version. You can also see the timeline at the bottom of the page, including both current and superseded versions. Let's pause for the moment on the topic of superseded versions. While the MCHW documents specified in a contract may now appear as superseded or withdrawn on the official website, they still remain valid for use because they are the versions referenced in the contract. It's important to remember the contract governs which document versions apply, not the current status shown online. So don't be misled by the website labels. What matters is what's written in the contract. Similar to the SHW, you can also search for IFS documents. Showing on the following page, the approach for document search, country specific and applicable date is similar as previously mentioned. Importantly, the WSR templates are available to download from the IFS document pages, so you can see, as you can see on the screen. We recognize this is a substantial change, so we are keen to support this transition. In addition to the usual standards for highways help pages, we have also developed a dedicated MCHW information hub. This is a website that covers essential guidance for the implementation of the updated MCHW. The hub explains why the MCHW has changed, what has changed, including key changes at suite level and document mapping for old to new. For example, it shows what happened to an old series, the alignment with the relevant new MCHW and the associated DMRB documents affected by the change. We've also summarized key changes at document level. As mentioned earlier, we have included a list of all topics treated in the MCHW to help find relevant information. Another important part of the hub is what do I do, including impact on all relevant parties, such as designers, contractors, product manufacturers, as mentioned before, how to navigate the Standards for Highways website, accessing and downloading documents and templates, both individually and in packages, accessing older versions as well, implementation considerations, and step-by-step guides to preparing and disseminating a contract-specific specification using the WSR templates. This hub is accessible to all and available via a link from the Standards for Highways website. The hub is kept up to date and the latest additions are flagged into the carousel on the home page. Now we recognize people will be coming to the updated MCHW at different times. So the MCHW Information Hub will remain live for as long as it is needed. If you are unable to find the support that you need on the Information Hub, please reach out to ask questions, which leads us onto the final slide. The final slide is our feedback slide. If you have any questions or feedback on the updated MCHW or the Information Hub, please make use of the feedback form on the Standards for Highways website. When using this form, your feedback will be directed to the relevant team for response or action. Please do get in touch, as this will help us ensure the information is supporting the industry in transitioning well to the updated DMRB and MCHW documents. That brings the end to my session. I'll now hand you back to Steve for closing remarks. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Sully. And thank you everybody for attending this webinar. During this webinar, we've covered information that we hope will be useful to you and adopting and using the new MCHW. But to wrap up, a reminder of the key benefits of this work. There's fewer and easier to maintain digital content. We've reduced the number of volumes from 7 to 3, but with a 20% reduction in page count. This means we can keep it up to date more often than we have done before. The clear and up-to-date requirements in the new SHW provide a framework for future construction practices and innovation. There's clearer and easier access to instructions for specifiers in the new IFS documents. There's greater efficiency in the production of contract specifications, as well as enhanced quality of their final outputs using the downloadable, standardized work-specific requirement templates. The HTML documents are now accessible, and they can be searchable through a modern browser, much easier, and country-specific versions are included. We embed quality and design to construction through better alignment between the MCHW and DMRB. And it enables better environmental outcomes, strengthened by operational performance and elevated customer experience. Certainly, there is a large number of new products that are now permitted under the specification that weren't previously permitted, are lower carbon. And previously, it would have been necessary to apply for a departure standard, but they're certainly now much more available and available for use now, once the new version of the MCHW has been adopted on your contract. So we hope that you've, by the end of this session, you've understood about how the changes to the MCHW have been made, and where we're planning to go in a little bit in the future. So, and most importantly, the available support like the information hub that Sully's given you quite a bit of detail about how to access. Please make use of that. It has got a lot of information in there. So thank you very much for your time. We'll aim to respond to the remaining unanswered questions and consolidate the responses with those that are collected from future webinars. We'll share them all in a FAQ page on the information hub. And on the screen now, there is a number of QR codes to access the Standards for Highways website, the information hub, and the feedback form, as well as some links to the low carbon roundtable and showcases of what's possible now through the MCHW, which wasn't particularly available before without departures in various domains, particularly pavements, geotechnics, and structures. So with that, thank you very much for your time, and I hope you enjoy using the new MCHW.